Welcome all you people out there in YouTube land. Thank you for being there. We are live streaming from the University of Illinois campus. This is Smith Hall, room 25, and we have some very special guests today that are all here for a concert that we're going to be putting on Sunday, May 1st, in the Cranham Performing Arts Center here on the campus in the Colwell Playhouse Theater at 7:30. Christian McBride is going to be presenting a performance of his kind of multimedia work that includes choirs and our jazz vocal ensemble and narration and the concert jazz band, and all these folks behind me here will be performing. They're all incredible musicians. I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. But it's a piece called The Movement Revisited, and it's basically a piece about social justice and four civil rights icons: Rosa Parks, Muhammad Ali, Dr. Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. And so please try to check that out. It's part of the 125th anniversary of the School of Music here at the University of Illinois, which we're sitting in the building, which is still 125 years old, I believe. In some ways that's beautiful, and in some ways not so beautiful. But we're still here, and we are in the basement, just in case you didn't know. I guess where jazz was born. And it's part of that, and it's called the New Awakenings 2. We had the New Awakenings 1 concert, which is back on April 9th, I think. Yep. That was primarily choral based. Yes. And then this one is a mix. It's got both. So I'll just say that. All right, so I'm going to let Dr. Barrington Coleman introduce our group of panelists here right now. It feels like a group panel. But our guest artists that are here to perform on The Movement Revisited. And we'll go from there, and we'll just kind of open it up for questions and answers, and anything you guys want to ask, please feel free, and I'll let them chat. Go ahead, Dan. Thanks.
So to our live stream audience and to everybody present, we're really excited to finally be in this space with our guest artists. We have been working on this setting for a very, very long time. All of us have been talking about it. The thing that I think is so invaluable to us for our School of Music is to have recognized artists, celebrated artists who take time to come in and then they work immediately with us as students. I'm just very excited about that. As you can see behind me, it's also a reunion. So we're excited about that. I don't want to take a lot of time to speak about the New Awakenings project. Chip has already mentioned that. So I'm going to get right to business because I think all of our folks are here. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge our special guest artist. Christian McBride is an 8-time Grammy Award-winning bassist, composer, and band leader. Christian is an artistic director of the historic Newport Jazz Festival in New Jersey, Performing Arts Center, and so many of you know about this gentleman because we've been talking about him with you all, with our live stream artists. But I will just say this: if you just do any kind of Wikipedia search or just do bass, his face is beside his face. Whether it is Freddie Hubbard, whether it's Chaka Khan, whether it's James Brown, his idol, whether it's whomever, in every phase, he is beloved. He is Christian McBride. So we thank you for him. Yeah. Along with Christian McBride, we have so many distinguished artists, and I'll just take time to acknowledge them. To my right and your center, because I'm blocking it right here, we have Ron Blake. Yeah. I'm going to do all of our instrumentalists first and save something else for last. Right in the middle and to center behind me, Steve Wilson, saxophone. And to his left, Sasha Berliner, vibraphone. Yeah. And next, our trumpet player, Nathan Eckley. Yeah. You haven't met. We have not. Please. Oh. Of course he is. This is our drummer, McClinty Hunter. Yeah. gentleman who you have not yet seen, but he will be with us, our pianist, Jeffrey Keyser. But also, I'm so grateful to have this phenomenal vocalist with us. We have two. One is our co-composer, co-arranger of The Movement Revisited, J.D. Steele. He's also our chorus master. You'll be hearing and seeing him because I know all of you will be with us on Sunday night. But we're very fortunate to have this wonderful artist with us on this afternoon. This is Alicia Olatuja.
I think we'll just kind of open it up and let you guys, we'll do some Q&A at the end, but maybe just talk a little bit about your careers, your paths to this.
Whoa.
This is kind of what this is about. Usually we have our groups play, but we just thought we'll just let you guys talk about music and life.
So, as James Brown said to CNN in 1988, let's talk about some music.
Yeah. Right on. Well, are there any questions you guys have for these guys? Maybe like about paths?
Yeah.
Q&A. Yeah, right. There's one back there,
I
Andrew.
think it would be probably make a lot more sense if, folks can get to, because, I could go for it. I don't have a lot to talk about, but boy, can I stretch it out.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Over here.
Yeah, I have a question for Sasha. I'm a huge fan of your music.
Oh, thank you.
I was checking out your SWR classic video, the concert you performed last year with Julia Vandenberg. I was wondering how you approach copying for someone who has such a specific harmonic palette, but most of their creativeness comes from the motivic stuff they develop. How do you approach copying someone like that?
So you're talking about Kalia specifically? It's interesting because I feel like with her, I wasn't focusing on her motifs as much as sort of the feeling that she creates. She tends to create this very, I don't know, for those of you who don't know, Kalia Vandenberg is a great trombonist in the New York City area. I've known her for quite some time now. And she basically performed with me at this commission I did for the SWR New Jazz Meeting, which is sort of like a year, it's every 2 years they basically commission an artist to bring a group and curate some new music and then do a series of performances in Southwest Germany. So I did that in November. And yeah, I think when it came to Kalia's playing, her playing, I like to describe it's very like suspended. There's a lot of space. It creates sort of a lot of, she creates a lot of air. She's not like, I think she says more in like what space she leaves rather than like, I don't know how to describe it, but I would say that I want to honor that, by not playing too much under her. And I think it's an instinct for anyone who plays, guitar or vibraphone. I mean, it's not to say it doesn't apply to pianists either, but just any instrument where you're sort of limited in terms of how many voices you can fill out, and also possibly the range that you have on the instrument. I guess maybe this doesn't apply to guitar as much, it's just a vibraphone thing, but anyways, it's more to say that there's always an instinct to fill space when it's there, but sometimes space doesn't always need to be filled. It can exist, and that in itself can be a really powerful musical statement. And it's one of the things I learned about Kalia's playing, and she tends to do also like repetitive phrases and stuff like that, and sort of just letting those have room to breathe was really important to that performance, just resisting that urgency to want to fill up the space when it doesn't always need to happen that way, and it doesn't always call for that. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Thank you.
no problem.
Anything else? Come on, there's everybody. Yeah, go ahead up there.
I have a question for Christian. Specifically, your album, Your New John, it's one of my favorite pianolist albums.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, what do you personally enjoy about pianolist groups, or when you're writing, what influences you, or some of your favorite textures to use and that kind of thing?
Well,
Thank you very much. Is it okay if I pull this down? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm vax times 4.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, most of it, yeah.
well, the reason why I put that band together in the first place was because I was just wrapping up my trio with Christian Sands and Ulysses Owens Jr. And I felt like that trio had such a strong personality. Whatever my next band was going to be, it had to be a 180-degree turn from that. I didn't simply just want to have another trio playing a similar style. So I've had the great benefit of doing a residency at the Village Vanguard for 2 weeks every year, and it gives me an opportunity to sort of toy and experiment with some different groups. So I thought, well, let me try a chordless group, because I don't usually get to play in groups like that often. And not only did I want to have a band that was so completely different from the trio, but I really, really love a challenge. And to play in a group with no chords, that's extra responsibility for me. And I like putting myself under that sort of pressure because, sometimes when you play in a group with a piano or a piano and a guitar, or piano and vibes or guitar and vibes, whatever the case may be, subconsciously, you can take a few more chances, because a chord is going to be played. So, if I want to put some substitutions in there, some harmonic substitutions, the impact of those substitutions depend on what chord is being played. So, like, if there are no chords being played, that's extra responsibility for me. Now I gotta think twice about if I'm gonna put that substitution in there, that might be too jarring, or it might not be. It might work wonderfully. And I just have to pay a little closer attention, and so that's why I wanted to put that group together. And Nasheet Waits is someone who I've admired and known for a long time, but we virtually never played together. I mean, I've known Nasheet for 25 years, and I think we only played together once, and so I knew he was gonna have some time off from Jason Moran's trio, so I asked him to do the Vanguard. And Marcus Strickland, I played with a bunch in the past, and Josh Evans was someone who, again, like I was very curious about him. I had never played with him before, so I said, well, let's just play a week at the Vanguard and see what happens. And 6.5 years later, it's still a band. In fact, the next record is coming out at the end of this year.
Yeah, that's cool. Very good. Yeah. Jose.
So I have a question. My name is Jose. I have a question about moving to New York. So I graduated here in 2020, and the vibe that I got while in school, not from the faculty, but like from my peers, it was like that it's impossible. That in terms of the level of playing, in terms of cost of living and all that. That's years ago. And then I was there last week, staying with a friend, and he's playing a lot. He's like really making a name for himself there. So I feel like out of balance from the perspective I had, and right now I'm kind of feeling too hopeful. I'd like to see what are your I don't know, if you have any advice for people who are willing to move there these days.
Well, all right, I'll jump in. I'm sure we all have something to say about that. No, if that's where you want to go, go. Whether it's New York or somewhere else, but New York is very unique in terms of it being a cultural center. Unique artists, not just musicians, but artists of every discipline from all over the world. And even just on the musical terms, so much is there. Now, obviously, this is an amazing program because there's so much to take advantage of here and other programs like this. So this is a great training ground, one of the best. But if you think, well, I want to go to New York and see what happens, go. In my own case, this is now my 35th year in New York. Yeah, that's what, I'm still saying that. And I went to New York in 1987, I said, well, I'll give it a year, see what happens. And I tell everyone, this has been the longest year of my life. You know, I'm still trying it out. So go, I mean, if that's part of your dream, pursue it, there's nothing stopping you, go, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd say just like come up with a plan or an idea of how you could get there and stay there for a period of time. I think there's a lot of people that just feel like my musicianship's at a level where I should be able to move to New York and just start gigging all the time because I'm playing well enough.
Right.
And you might be playing well enough, but there's so many great musicians in the New York City area, and you've gotta find a way to give yourself time to get connected, to network, to get to know other people, to have other people know you, and to kind of find your common group of people that you're gonna be involved and engaged with. And if you can find a way to stay long enough to do that, then I think New York is a great place. I mean, I transferred out when I was in college in the fall of '98, so I've been out there almost 25 years now. And it took me a long time to kind of figure out how to do that. But I finished school and I found ways, I got some teaching opportunities and some regular gigs that I could do, and it was able to kind of buy me enough time to be able to like hang in the New York City area, and then over time you'll network more and connect. But I think that expectation, I mean, I think almost regardless of your level of musicianship, I think an expectation that you're gonna go out there and just start to work right off the bat is not a great hope to have, just for no other reason than just the sheer number. I mean, I've been out there almost 25 years, and like last week I worked with a saxophonist that I was like, how have we never worked, you know, just like phenomenal musician. And I'm like, he had been in New York for 30 years and I've been there almost 25, and it's like, how have we never crossed paths? But that's just kind of what the scene is.
I remember, I know McClinty mentioned yesterday too, that you teach.
Right.
You know, and that's enabled you probably, and especially here through COVID, you know, to keep going and keep able to press your career forward. You
Right,
know?
so, yeah, I'm also a music teacher at a middle school in the South Bronx. And I've been doing that for about 14 years. And so, in addition to what Nathan is talking about, you know, the networking opportunities, having that bit of stability has also provided me a way of being able to stay in New York so I can make those connections and build that network. I didn't come to New York for school, so that also provided a kind of built-in network. But it's about sustainability. You gotta have a plan to be able to wait it out. I remember meeting Rupert Reed. Mr. Reed, I had probably been in New York for about 5 years, and I was very proud. So I introduced myself. He said, "Oh wow, how long have you been here?" I said, 5 years, sir," very confidently. He said, "Oh, you just got here."
Yeah.
And I was like, but you know, now looking back, it takes a bit of time.
For sure. I
Yeah,
think
that's cool.
we could all say something about that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could add much more than they've said. I mean, I think that, you know, like Steve's, you know, I sort of had a little bit of a plan. I thought and I was teaching beforehand, before I went to New York. I had been teaching, and I had spent several years starting out playing in Chicago. A lot of the faculty that are here were people that were my mentors that I played with a lot starting out. Larry's standing back there, Joan Hickey, Joel Spencer, those are people that, you know, I was playing gigs with, you know, a lot when I left Chicago, taught for a few years. Then I decided to go to New York, and I thought, okay, I've got enough money saved up to, you know, I'm gonna make it like 6 to 8 months and work into the scene. That lasted 3 months, because I really didn't realize how expensive it was, and I just didn't budget properly, and I wanted to go out and check out music and do stuff and hang out, and, you know, then you start to get really creative. You know, I think sometimes when that urgency is there just to eat, and stuff like that, things take on a different kind of, intensity and sense of purpose, you know, and your playing and your ability to get out there and get yourself out there, you know, takes on a different light. So I mean, if it's a part of what you wanna do, I think you should pursue it, but yeah, New York is challenging, and I mean, if you, just yesterday, they just published the average rents in New York have gone up anywhere between like 40 to 111% around the city. So, you know, plan on living with 5 or 6
Right.
people in a really tiny place. You know, stuff like that. Because I mean, I teach in New York still, and you know, I'm always talking to my students about this stuff. You know, I'm just like, what are you all gonna do? What do you do? I mean, seriously, because I can't imagine, you know, having those kind of challenges. You know, with the, it's so expensive, and believe it or not, this is something I learned. I've been in New York 30 years, but I remember talking to Christian one time, just kind of casually. I had been off the road for a minute, and been doing more teaching, and was more local, and I started going out touring again and playing. And I noticed that the bread for gigs was kind of like the same as it was when I had been out on the road like 20 years before, you know? And I said to Christian, I said, hey, you know, and I wasn't on, well, I was on his gig, but I wasn't asking him
Thanks,
about, because, you know, people were calling me to go out and inviting me to go out and stuff, and I was like, so, you know, what's up? And he's like, man, you know, stuff hasn't really shifted in that way. So expenses are higher. Some gigs pay great, but I mean, like a lot of folks here, I mean, I teach as much as I can. I like to teach though. It's not something I do for, you know, just to pay bills or something. I actually like to do, let's put it this way, I try to do things that I enjoy doing, that I'm passionate about. And that's really helped sustain me over the long haul. Once I kind of started to figure that out, New York got a lot easier for me. So.
If I may tell a quick story about how I met Alicia, because one thing I find, I think many of us can agree, I think vocalists have an exceptionally challenging road to recognition, particularly in New York, because like every third person you meet in New York City is a vocalist. And they all got restaurant gigs or some hotel lobby gig. I mean, they're working a lot, but you know, there's sort of like a ceiling there, you know. And so it was 12 years ago, 2010, Juilliard presented The Movement Revisited. And for the lead vocal part, our friend Laurie Carter and Carl Allen said, listen, we're gonna, you know, put some feelers out there, and we're gonna invite 5 singers who we think you might like to hear, and they'll audition for you, you know. Send us what you want them to sing, and we'll, you know, we'll hook it up. So on the day of the auditions, Alicia was the first one. She came in and she sang like 4 bars. And I said, send everybody home. And I said, but you haven't, no, send them home. She killed it so hard, right? And now, okay, well, so what? I'm sure those other 4 singers would have killed it. Some singers who weren't at the audition would have killed it, right? It didn't necessarily mean that because she killed it, she was going to have a really great career, right? There's a lot of people out there killing it who don't have great careers for various reasons, you know? But it's been wonderful for me to see how, like you're one of the few vocalists I know that, like, you figured something out. You know? You work with all the cool people.
Yep.
I've seen who you know, kind of hang around and work with, and it's kind of like, I'm always in the, you don't see me, but I'm always in the back, like, yeah.
I will tell you what I figured out, but if I'm gonna tell you, you have to take some pictures, because my grandmother has threatened me.
Got you.
She told me, if you don't send me any pictures,
You in trouble.
you out the wheel.
All
So, okay, my family is very big on education, so they need to see me do education stuff. So just act like I'm doing something right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then everybody throw up your arms. Yeah. Okay, great. Can we get some audience participation?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, grandmother,
POV.
this is for you. Yay!
This is why she works.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, she's for real. Okay, to answer that question, and you really do have to figure something out. Like, it's not, the thing is, every road that you decide to take for your career is gonna be unique. And that's the tricky part, because you usually get someplace like New York, you ask questions, like these great questions, and we're giving you answers. But the road to success, especially when it comes to artists, and especially in New York, doesn't look like this. It looks more like this. And it's violent, okay? And the thing, it is. And what I would say, the two things that has helped me be able to maintain a steady inclination or growing or just is to, one, get your mind game correct. We spend so much time shedding our instrument, but we don't spend the same amount of time on personal development. And I feel like New York, and in any profession, but I would just say, based on my experience, I'm from Missouri, okay? I'm from right over there. I graduated from Mizzou. Like, I'm not, I didn't have all those, people right next door, or I was so close and I could see it. No, nobody in Missouri was talking about doing music. As a matter of fact, they made fun of me when I said I wanted to consider it. So you have to have your mind game correct. You have to find a way to make sure that as you are developing musically, that you're using the lessons that you're learning from that music, from the journey, and being able to find a life application for it, being able to make a connection so that you are not imbalanced in your development. And this is something that we talked about in the workshop we did, was it yesterday?
Yep.
Okay. And I've created a whole course about it. It's called Vocal Breakthrough Academy, and it just helps people be able to use singing as a tool for personal development, even if they've never sang a day in their life. So a lot of people come to this class, a lot of instrumentalists definitely come to the class, because I've been told that it feels like there's a mediator between you and the audience. It's not a direct thing, so you can kind of hide behind it just a little bit, or if anything goes awry, you can say, oh, well, the piano's out of tune, or the bass is old, and the strings ain't. But when you're singing, it's just you. They don't like you. And so it's like, so it's so personal, and you have to be so vulnerable, you have to present everything in the journey of who you are in that moment right then and there. But being able to do that and have the mentality and mind game to be able to do that actually is an incredible skill to have. And so I feel like if you really want to do this, I don't care where you plan on moving, but definitely a place of very high competition, because the first attack or the first thing that you're going to find challenges are not going to be in what you do. It's going to be in who you are and how you think. And so if you are able to develop a mental way of navigating through the industry, you will be able to overcome burnout. You'll be able to overcome the insecurities that creep in. You'll be able to overcome the competition and the comparison culture that we know is actually heightened now. It's a lot higher with social media than it was when I first moved to New York. So you have to do that. The second thing you have to be able to do is pivot. You have to be able to pivot. And so a lot of people think, okay, what does that mean, pivot? Well, a lot of us in 2020 had to figure out how to pivot. It seemed like rent didn't stop. I don't understand. I don't know how that even worked. It's like, wait a minute, so everything's closed down. I can't play nowhere, but the rent is still happening? Really? Okay. But all of us saying, we have teaching jobs. That's a pivot as well. Being able to have something that you can shift to still feel fulfillment, to express your gift, to make an impact. Isn't that what we do as artists, right? There's many ways to do that. And also being as versatile in those pivots as possible. I know a lot of us have our genres that we love and we just hold them dear to our hearts, but being as versatile in what you do is super important. Everybody up here can play anything. That's something I think has been really important. When I became connected, I was like, wow, okay, yeah, so we got connected before the inauguration.
Right after.
No, 2010 was when I met you. The inauguration was 2013.
Well, you said the second one.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right,
Okay, I just realized that. Okay, that's crazy. Okay, so I don't know what's going on. But I sang, at the second inauguration of President Barack Obama, and that opened up a lot of doors for me. But I was singing kind of like a classical style with some gospel riffs, and then the jazz world opened up to me. So it doesn't always move the way that you think it does. So have as many cards to put down on the table as possible that still serve your greater why. It keeps you connected. I know a lot of people move, they get caught up in maybe, one of my friends, she started working at a jewelry shop and she made good money. Another friend of mine started working as a secretary in a church and she made good money. And slowly but surely they let go of what brought them there. And they found themselves very disheartened, very discouraged because they became unplugged from their first love because of the demands to pay that rent and to live. So you have to make sure whatever your pivot is, it still has a root that connects you to your greater why and what brings you there. And that'll also continue to feed your mentality and keep you focused. That is what I believe has helped me be able to maintain my career and my sanity. Because if you lose one, you can lose the other. Okay? All right.
Piggyback on that because you said something about, the theme of that was having your mind right, and I think I can speak for particularly myself and Ron and Steve, because, we've been around for a while and we've seen a lot, right? I think at this point, hearing people who are really great, that doesn't quite impress us anymore. You know what I mean? If I hear somebody who's really, really killing, my first knee-jerk reaction is like, I really hope they're cool. Seriously, because when you're at a certain level, you just want to be killing, be like, I should be on the gig because I can play, right? And like, you act a certain way, you talk a certain way, you don't represent yourself well on social media a lot of times, but you killing, right? I'm gonna tell you right now, if he's really extra killing, he's not quite as killing, but he's a dream to be around. Guess who's getting the gig? Him, right? So I do want all of you, and I think this goes with Alicia's, answer of like keeping your mind right. You're also saying how the competition culture is so much more heightened now because of social media. I think that's because when things don't go the way people hope they will, they go straight to Facebook. They go straight to Facebook and they start subliminally, or maybe not so subliminally, bashing the situation or the person responsible for that situation. That gets out. That gets out. I can't tell you how many cats have called me and said, hey, I heard you were thinking about hiring X. You better look at this. And I'm telling you, I've made some hires where I didn't see what they sent me before I made the hire. I'm like, oh, man. All right, well, let me just get through these gigs. Hopefully I'll treat them right enough that I won't end up as a subject. So, be aware of what people see, what people feel, you know what I mean? Simply because your art is not developing the way you hope it will, that does not mean you're not going to eventually get where you want to get. It's just not the route you think is going to go. That's for everybody. For everybody.
You're not get jaded.
There is no one singular path.
Exactly.
If every one of you went to New York or wherever, you would all have your unique paths. And with everything taken into account that everyone has just said. So don't get this idea that, well, if I do X, A through B through Z, that's gonna happen. No, every one of you are gonna have your own unique path because each one of you have a unique set of gifts. So embrace those gifts. Like, again, with what everyone's just said here, beautiful answers. But just remember that there's no one. Even though your best friend, your roommate, is gone, you meet him or her there, you're gonna be on different paths. So just remember that.
It's kind of like, we talk to them a lot about like what we're doing when we're improvising. West jazz musicians, our whole life is improvising, and there is no one set thing. The flexibility thing and keeping your mind, just keep your artistic vision, whatever it is. But you're gonna have all this other stuff that comes into it, and you kind of have to to go to your point too, Nathan, you know, you do have to have a plan. Well, yeah, we work on tunes, we're in harmony, all the things, musical things. That's that part. But in the end, when you get on the bandstand, if you have an agenda, I always tell them that, you know, come to the bandstand with no agenda.
Yeah.
And just play. Oh, that's good to hear. All right, they've heard this from me a lot. You know, and just see what's right there in front of you, and everybody, the vibe you get, and how that you always make more music that way.
Yeah.
That's when the stuff lifts off the ground. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know there was a question, I got you next. Yeah,
Thank you. I have a question for you, Mr. McBride. A couple of my very all-time favorite jazz records are the trilogy records that you did with Chick Corea and Brian Blade. One of the things I love so much about that record is just the completely uninhibited conversational element that happens between the three of you. I was just wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about how that project came together, or anything at all you'd like to share about the process of recording. And I know that those were live records as well.
Yeah, thank you. You know, playing with Chick was a dream, as Steve Wilson can attest, having played in Origin. Chick was the most regular legend you could ever imagine. He was just an everyday kind of person, you know. If Chick were here right now, he would probably offer to sit out there. You know, that's just how cool he was. You know, he loved talking about his brief time at Juilliard. You know, Chick probably wouldn't mind me telling the story, but he says when he auditioned for Juilliard, he had just discovered weed. So he said he smoked a joint before his audition and blanked out. So, you know, he got on the piano, he's like, I forgot what piece I'm playing. So he had to re-audition, you know, had to reapply, all that kind of stuff. And went to Columbia in the meantime, and then came back to Juilliard. But I mean, he's just such a super cool guy, you know. In 2006 and 2007, he went on tour with the Return to Forever reunion. And right as that tour was ending, he put together the 5-piece band with John McLaughlin, Kenny Garrett, myself, and Vinnie Colaiuta. And I think, and he didn't say this, but I was reading in between the lines. I think after 3.5 years of a lot of volume, I think Chick was like, I need a trio. You know, I just need to unplug everything and just, you know. And I think what you hear on a lot of those trilogy records is a relief and just one genius and 2 of his admirers having fun.
3 geniuses.
Yeah, I was gonna
If you say so.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was curious how everybody on the panel deals with setbacks and failures, both like in your careers and your lives surrounding your careers, because obviously all of you are fantastic musicians who built amazing musical lives for yourself. But I'm curious how you deal with, you know, bad playing days. A gig doesn't go so well. You know, you don't make an audition that for a gig you really wanted. You know, how do you deal with those in the context of your life as a musician?
I don't.
That's never happened.
I guess it kind of depends on what's considered a setback.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just to reiterate just some of what you heard before, I think that the path to the top, I mean, ultimately, I'll just say this, I saw a friend of mine, good friend of mine, post this the other day, and I know that he would mind me borrowing this, because we do a lot of that in music anyway, but I think if you can be the best version of yourself, no matter what the situation is, and that's what you show up and you present, even if you don't get the gig or you have a bad playing day, but you're like honestly trying your best, I don't think there's really any bad days, you know, I mean, from a professional standpoint, and I've had some bad days, I mean, for sure. I've been in some high pressure situations that just, things just didn't work out, but I would say that most of that stuff was really getting back to what, we were talking about getting your head straight and stuff like that. I think there were setbacks for me personally that affected my professional career at times more than anything. But that's, you can find a good therapist for that. Or other things, but
Yeah.
since we're in an academic environment. But we did talk about chicks smoking weed, so.
Yeah.
No, but just, I think that, I think that you have to just kind of get some perspective on that. I mean, I don't think that there's a bad if you show up with your best self. It might not be the outcome that you want, but I don't think I have lower expectations, but I have almost no expectations going into things, and a lot of times things just happen to turn out way better than I possibly imagined when I go in with that sort of attitude.
Yeah.
I'll shut up now, that's about it.
No, that's great.
Yes.
Anybody?
I'll offer one other thing. There's the art of letting go. Because stuff happens. That's part of the human condition. And that's part of the process, and that's part of your growth process. And so don't let a moment of what may be perceived failure, don't lose the lesson in that moment. So take each moment for the lesson it brings you, for the gift it brings you. And keep moving. And you may feel hurt, pain, sense of loss or sense of failure, whatever, but if you learn to let go and just keep moving, keep going, and take that lesson and let it make you better and more enlightened.
For sure.
I guess I can speak to something as well, sorry.
No.
Do any of you know this writer, Joan Didion?
Sure.
She recently passed,
That's
but
right,
she's a
yeah.
great fiction and nonfiction writer. She has this great article called On Self-Respect that I think all of you should read. It really helped me to read that in terms of the subject of self-respect, and when it comes to setbacks and things like that, it has a lot to do with having the courage to go through setbacks and negative moments because you have self-respect for yourself. Even if you're not able to get that from someone else, it's very easy to manipulate your way into pleasing an audience, into maybe social media. Someone can only see 15-second fragment of your playing. It's very easy to trick people. It's another thing to go through setbacks where you feel like no one's on your side, and you feel humiliated, and you think you can't come back from something like that, but you have the courage to come back to it again. And it's something that if you're gonna go into any field, but particularly an artistic field where you have so much subjectivity, it's inevitable you're gonna come across this kind of thing over and over again. Even the greatest musicians have bad days, have bad solos, have bad moments, have moments where you might think you played an amazing solo and hardly anyone claps afterwards. And that can really get in your head, but you have to have the self-respect to know that you did your best, and that because you love yourself so much that you can get through that, and that's not what's gonna be what breaks you. You just have to have that self-respect throughout, no matter what happens to you. And in terms of self-expression, it's so easy to take everything personally. Talk about moving to New York, I think is very easy to, everyone has a lot of opinions. It's very easy to take everything super personally, but ultimately, if you have the self-respect and the courage for yourself, that's what's gonna get you through anything, pretty much, more than anything else. So, just maybe remember that.
Hey, you know what, we're getting close on time and I don't wanna keep, I know some of them have to get to other things. But I want to say, just first of all, you guys are really, really super lucky. Take this as a wonderful opportunity. You're getting face-to-face time with these wonderful artists. And like I said, you know, for those of you who think, well, maybe being in school isn't that great, you know, trust me. I remember being in New York, Steve and I were talking about before. They remember your face. Oh yeah, I remember you from that thing, and that you were interested. And just that you, like you say, Ron said, present your best self. And just go do your honest thing, you know. Your level is gonna change, that's what you grow for all your life. So I think we're incredibly lucky to have them, and I feel incredibly honored to see all you guys and hear all of you. And I thank you for doing this, and Barrington for setting this up too. And we're
We still
gonna.
have 10 more minutes, right?
Well, we got about 5 minutes.
Oh.
I just wanted to get you onto the, you know, so we're not late. I don't want you to have to run.
We
Can we
gotta
have a
push
big
it up.
hand for everybody? How about a huge? If there is any more questions, feel free to ask.
I know there was 2 hands up still.
Okay, great.
I don't know if mine can be answered in time, but I know that like, as musicians, we constantly are learning and adapting and improving ourselves to stay successful. But I was just wondering if you guys could share maybe like unique situations that you've maybe been in that you've learned something from, or like a trial by fire, maybe like something that in the time was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? I'm super stressed out, but at the end of it, you found yourself better for.
Yeah, I have.
Go, Eddie.
Yeah,
Traveling to Champagne.
In addition to that, you know, going back to what Alicia is speaking about in the mental perspective, the strength and the fortitude that you need to have. I got this wonderful opportunity to play with Mr. Kenny Barron. And so he calls me, you know, and I'm super excited. I get there early and I play through the first night. And I'm a bit nervous, you know. I played through the second night. I thought it felt pretty good, but I recorded it. I was listening back and I was like, this did not work out. You know, I'm probably never going to get the opportunity again, but I have to trust the process. And the best thing about it is that listening to myself, I had an opportunity to realize that there's a lot of things I still need to work on, but also, eventually I got a call back again. And so I realized that I was being even harder on myself. And like Mr. Wilson is talking about, like, you gotta let go. I just realized in that moment, like, oh, it must not have been that bad. Or I played really well.
Yeah.
And the positive side of it is that I played really well. So it was kind of like a trial by fire. We didn't get a chance to rehearse anything like that. But it was an experience that I would never forget. And I kind of put that in my toolbox and remember those things so for the next opportunity.
I would say a quick thing on that, to add in on what we're all saying, just really powerful. The main thing you're gonna have to overcome when you screw up, the main thing you're gonna have to overcome when you're criticized, that's gonna be a lot more than the screw ups, actually, because it is subjective. The main thing you're gonna have to overcome is your inner saboteur. That is the main thing. That's the main thing. What's the inner dialogue that you're having with yourself? When you mess up, do you say, "You loser! Oh my God! No one's ever gonna hire me again." You know, when you do mess up, or when someone says, "You know what? I don't think this is for you." It might be somebody of great position, and it has to be the point where even if the greatest person you've ever admired in the world hears you play and they say, "You know what? You need to stick to something else." What do you then start to say to yourself after that moment? That is what is going to determine who you become as an artist and as a human being. Because you're going to get a lot of that. People who insert their will, people who insert their intentions, their motivations, or even their own pain. They try to insert that into your psyche. And so the conversations that you have with yourself have to be those that lift you up and get the gold out of the mess that may happen. Watch your inner dialogue. Watch your inner saboteur languaging. You're not good enough. Oh, see, you suck. Oh, that person grew up in New York City. Oh, that person is the grandson of that legend. You don't have a chance. That type of thinking, any of those things, you have to check it immediately at the door, like a person trying to get past the bouncer into the club. Like, you gotta check that at the door so that it doesn't start to create roots of insecurity and start tearing down your self-respect from the inside out.
Yeah.
I also think that, it depends on how badly you want something.
Yeah.
When I first moved to New York, I had like a list of people I really wanted to play with. One of the people on the top of that list was Freddie Hubbard. I knew Freddie Hubbard was a loose cannon. Now, as badly as how bad did I want that gig? You know, so like, if he goes on a rant, he starts yelling and screaming, I have to ask myself, am I willing to deal with that? The answer was yes. Right? So if I'm on the bandstand with him and he calls a song I don't know, and I start playing the wrong changes and he yells at me, I wanted the gig that bad because I wanted to learn something from that genius of a man. Crazy genius, but nevertheless a genius. So I also think it's like, how bad do you want it? Like, how bad are you really willing to learn? Because as we reiterate, there's no diamond line road. You know, no matter who you play with, no matter what experience you have, you're gonna get dinged up. You're gonna get dinged up, you're gonna get some knots. You know, and like you said, that inner voice, that could play some tricks on you. My very, very first gig in New York City, and this is why I laugh when people sort of, you know, I hear my own revisionist history, and I think, boy, you people have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. You know, I mean, like Barrington, you know, he knew me when I was first started gigging with Bobby Watson. I never told him these stories, but he saw it, you know, he knew when I was playing with Bobby. My very first gig in New York, Bobby Watson was not happy with the way I played, you know. And people are like, oh, get out of here. It's like, come on, I was 17, green as a cucumber, you know. And he was like, man, you know, you gotta stop dragging, man. You gotta learn how to play on top of the beat. I was like, well, what's on top of the beat? I never heard of that before, you know. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, it sounds like you mean rush. You know, like, get ahead, you know. And so I spent a whole year playing like an eighth note in front of the band. Nobody said anything, so that must be how they want me to play. All right. Wow, this sure feels uncomfortable. That's what they want, so that's what I'll do. So like I would say like the first 10 albums I ever played on, I'm rushing, you know. And I played a gig with Kenny Washington. Yeah, you know what happened. I played this gig, my first time playing with Kenny Washington. I'm like, wow, I'm playing with Kenny, you know. And like, he's vibing me the whole time. And we get on the break. I say, man, Mr. Washington is such an honor to play with. He say, man, sit down. He's like, man, why are you rushing so bad? I said, rushing? I'm just playing ahead of the beat. He's like, no, you're rushing. I said, I thought that's how you drummers like for us to play. He said, who told you that? I always like to say Kenny Washington single-handedly fixed my whole life. Just from that one conversation, he's like, stop rushing, man. Put it in the pocket. You funk dude. Approach swinging like you approach funk. Put it in the pocket. And I was like, finally. I mean, I had to live with playing an eighth note in front of everybody for like over a year. It was horrible. I'm still gigging, so.
That's hard.
I still see Kenny Washington's face. Who told you that?
Well, those are moments that you don't forget. Yeah, you know, that's everybody has it. Like the path, you know, you're gonna have multiples of those. Hopefully, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You know, because you get those kids, and it's like, yeah, that changes everything.
Yeah.
My father taught me to play the saxophone. I never had a lesson in my life about music, and when I would do that stuff when I was young, and I tried to play it too fast and I didn't know what I was doing. Of course, I thought I knew everything. and he'd just yell from the other room, he'd go, if you're not gonna play it right, put it in the box. And I never forgot that my entire life, and it changed my whole thing about patient, be patient, yeah. Yeah, put it back in the box, that's exactly what I got. Any other questions for these? Yeah.
I know that we're over time, so I wanna make this quick, but I'm just, curious, when you were all transitioning like into your careers, do you have any advice on finding a balance between teaching and performing and making both of them a part of your careers?
I do, but I've been talking so much, so
I think one of you two should get that. 'Cause y'all
transition.
teacher extraordinaires.
I don't know if there was much of a transition. I taught throughout college. Even though I had a significant scholarship, it was to pay for everything else. I tutored, I went to the New School of Jazz and Contemporary Music in New York, and I tutored the students who were there. And that was a good way to get an understanding of what the college level curriculum is, and then you can take that information and use it to teach other college students elsewhere. So that was sort of advantageous that I got to do that while I was attending college, but it's something that I've always done. I mean, I've been teaching music lessons since I was like, since before I actually started vibraphone, because drums was originally my first instrument. And, so I wouldn't say it's so much a transition, but it's always been something that I knew I had to do because New York is so expensive, because sometimes you don't know what's gonna happen to the gig market, especially like me being a vibraphonist. Not everybody needs a vibraphonist on their gig in the way that they need a drummer or a bass player or even a pianist. A horn player might be more in demand than a vibraphone is just an acquired sound. So I had to use that to my advantage, and so I've always taught, and I think it has been extremely helpful. And I would recommend it not only because I think it's important, financially, but I also think it's important mentally to give back everything that you've learned. And I think philanthropy just makes you feel good, and it makes you feel like what you're doing is for something, because ultimately you do perform your art for people. Music is a social act, it's a social situation, and if you're not sort of giving back everything that you've learned, I think it can get lost upon the world, and it should be more about, giving back rather than like, I'm, on the stage and performing for you, so I'm, beyond you in some way. Music shouldn't be that way. It should be more, we're sharing ideas and I'm giving back, what I've learned so that you can carry it forward in a different way.
Yeah, I think specific to like the kind of the balance of time, because I think we've all talked about, and I think everyone here really sees the value in teaching. I certainly was happy to teach out of college because I realized that even if when I was working, I was still like engaged and my mind was connected to music and I was thinking about the medium where I wanted to be. But I also realized really quickly that that wasn't the same thing as sitting and practicing and really like working on my craft. So without giving like a specific amount of time, I think one of the things that I would say is like, what's the amount that you can teach that is obviously gonna help you earn the income that you need to survive, but isn't gonna take away from your ability to still find those hours and that energy and that drive to practice. Because I think, I certainly know for me, I would say that as motivated as I was in college, I have a different kind of motivation to practice right now. And I wake up every day with an agenda, the stuff that I need to get to and what I'm gonna work on, and it's way more organized and kind of, like I have a structure to my practice now that's like really, I hope will still get better, but is like really formulated and I feel like I have a much better clue on how I can improve now than before. But even though I look back at my 20s years of practicing and I feel like I was kind of misguided and I was like, why did I work on that instead of this and all that stuff, I do also understand the value of that time that I spent there. And I think that if we're looking for that, and we really want to grow, you have to find a way for that to be consistent time. And if you can take on 35 hours of teaching and still have the energy to come home and shed for a couple hours at the end of the day, then you're not teaching too much. But if you find that like you teach that much and you get to the end of your day and you're like, I don't have the energy to practice anymore, then if that's really what you want to be doing, that's too much teaching. So that's where it's going to be really different for each individual, but for each of us have to kind of figure out where that balance is.
Hey, listen, we want to get on because I know Christian was going to do a bass thing for Larry's bass students, and Nate was going to go do a trumpet master class for Tito's students. So how about another big round of applause? Gear there, I see. Thank you for, winning Rome.
I sent all my clothes to get dry cleaned today, and I realized I didn't have an extra sweater.
There you go.
Smooth ride.
It works. There you go. Thank you guys. Thanks everybody. The bass students, guitar students, stick around. Christian's doing his stuff. And Nate, I think he knows that. Thank you guys.